Hi, everybody. Good to see you from all over the world.
Welcome to the Sid City Social Club for Tuesday, July 14th.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the play. Mel was mentioning something to me that, of course, not everybody is a DS9 fan, and not everybody has even watched the show. And we will do something to address that. Looks at another aspect of my career and not deep space. So anyway, this week, I think I'd like to talk about around the idea of tolerance, what that means, how thick-skinned or thin-skinned we should be. That kind of interests me because I think we're a bit at sea at the moment, especially with all these, especially in America right now, and I think all around the world actually on some level. It's an interesting subject. If you want to chat about that, feel free. If you don't want to talk about tolerance, by the way, you don't have to. You just go pass. I will come up with something else. Take the fifth.
Our first guest tonight is Rose.
Hi.
Hi, Rose. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm staying with my parents, but I normally live in Austin, Texas.
When did you move up to Baltimore?
Well, I'm a grad student, so I came here for spring break, and then I just stayed.
Spring break broke. How are you communicating with all the people you just said, I'll see you in a few days to?
Well, we basically, our school instantly put, because I was also a TA this past semester, and they sort of instantly put everything online. So I taught lectures on Zoom, and I also did my PhD prospectus defense on Zoom, and I passed that, so I'm a PhD candidate. Thank you.
Fantastic. That's really great. What's your PhD?
Musicology, music history, basically.
You are our first musicologist. That's fantastic. Well, you might not. You're the first one I've talked to. What's your area of historical interest?
Well, I focus on film music mostly. My main area is anime soundtracks, and so a lot of that is very recent. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've ever seen an anime. Is that weird?
No, I don't think that's weird.
What defines anime?
Well, that it's Japanese is the general sort of boundary we put on it. I guess it often has a particular art style. There's a lot of it that doesn't follow that.
So I've seen it. It's uniquely Japanese. I suppose it probably isn't anymore, but it started off as being uniquely Japanese, and it has a very sharp, a hard, contrasty, graphic presence. I mean, those spiky hair, all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So what made you go, right, become a doctor of the music on this particular area?
I realized that nobody else was studying this. I thought it used music in a way that was really interesting and really different from what I was hearing on like American TV shows and even American animation TV shows. And so that was sort of what got me into it.
I think it's so smart to pick such a niche idea. You're going to be one of the very few people who are a resource for them. So that's really, really smart. Are you appraising it? Are you looking for thematic relevance? Are you trying to find some sort of theme? I mean, some sort of cohesiveness in the world of anime music?
The thematic stuff is kind of what I'm doing. Like my dissertation, actually, I'm looking at like constructs of identity in anime soundtracks. So gender, race, nationality, LGBT stuff, that sort of thing, and like how the soundtrack reflects the attitudes in the anime about that.
That's really interesting because I guess it prepares, like all film music, it prepares the audience for a meeting.
Yeah, lots of experience sort of like explaining to my students. They're always like, unsure how, music approaches identity. But then I just think like, have you ever seen a movie that takes place in Africa or East Asia? How do you know when they're going there? Like they always play some sort of really cheesy stereotyped music.
Yeah,
so that's an example of how it communicates identity. And I think doing it with anime is really interesting because, in Japan, obviously they have different attitudes about this stuff. Yeah. So it's really interesting to see how it's similar or different from the American context.
So what offends you?
I don't feel like I get as upset about microaggressions, but I can definitely think of ones that I've experienced. I'm a lesbian. I have a friend I go out with a lot to the movies and for dinner who is a gay man. We often have waiters and people assume that we are a man and a woman on a date. Right. Whereas like if I go out with another woman, I've had usually acquaintances, people I hadn't explicitly come out to, approach me like I'm just out with a friend.
What little do you know?
Yeah, it's awkward because like obviously they can't read my mind. They don't know me personally, but I mean, I guess that's what a microaggression is. It's like when people just make assumptions about you must be from majority group or something.
Yeah, you notice right now, you can't help but notice through all this last hoo-ha with Pride Month, obviously the astonishing tragedy of the deaths of several people very quickly and the Black Lives Matter reaction. And then there was a kind of weird, I mean, I could understand the rioting and the looting because that always happens when you have anger reaction. But what interests me is what happened, it's a kind of subtle thing that happened after that. There was a pulling down of statues, and then there was a kind of re-examination, which often happens, of historic figures. Some were founding fathers. At what point do you think, I'm trying to get to the point where it's too far?
Well, it's a thing I've kind of thought about a lot, because like academia is trying to deal with that in terms of how we talk about certain figures. And so I've seen a lot of conversations about this in musicology at our academic conferences, and like, how do we deal with, how do we teach figures who are horrible to women, or really racist, or like involved in the slave trade? I recently learned that George Frederick Handel was like involved, he invested in the slave trade in England at the time. And so it's like, you know, how do we teach this stuff? It's a thing that I always think of, because one of my other research interests is Wagnerian opera. Richard Wagner was very anti-Semitic.
Yes, he was. I'm
actually wearing a Ring Cycle shirt right now. I just realized that.
I went as a kid.
Oh, you did?
When I was 18, I went to the Festspiel House in Bayreuth, and
oh wow, that's like my top of my bucket list.
It absolutely happened to me. I watched a rehearsal. I had Daniel Barenboim as the conductor, so I'm a big fan. I mean, huge fan. I mean, I was kind of obsessed.
Oh, that's so cool. Because I know some musicologists who think because of that legacy, we just shouldn't teach him, which I think is totally wrong, because he's so influential. His music, like, is what got me into opera, personally.
Have you watched Lenny Bernstein's documentary series on musicology? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I completely disagree with him, but he's amazing, because he doesn't believe you can place metaphor on music. He doesn't believe that that's allowed. And I do believe that you can see whatever you want with music. But my goodness, what a lovely conversation to have.
Oh, thank you so much. I admire you all the more knowing that you are also an opera fan.
Okay, we are going to Ryan Kennedy.
Hey, how you going, Sid?
Hey, Brian. Are you in Australia right now?
Yes, I'm in Australia, in Melbourne, which you seem to have a lot of Australian fans in Melbourne specifically.
Yeah, because Melbourne's pretty groovy. It's kind of got a really big hip scene, as far as I can tell.
It is, yeah. It's really one of the big art hubs of the country.
Yeah, it's great. Do you have lots of parakeets in the trees? I just remember seeing a lot of the parakeets in the trees in Melbourne.
Yeah, not where I live specifically, but I do know about 10 or 15 minutes down the road, there's like a flock of them in a local park. So, yeah.
I'm sure they're just pests, but my goodness, they're beautiful if you've never seen them wild before.
Oh, yeah, they're beautiful, yeah.
Yeah,
way better than cockatoos. Which are just the most horrible things if you ever have to wake up to them.
It's not going to happen in Massachusetts. What is your thing? What do you enjoy doing?
So I'm a waiter, as a way to pay bills. But in my off time, I'm a writer and actor.
Oh my goodness, fantastic. What sort of genre are you writing?
The most recent thing I've written that's like actually been performed was I wrote myself a one-man show, which is kind of a contemporary drama, but just kind of told through one person. Most of the stuff I've written is contemporary drama. The most recent thing I've written that was then we then performed was I did a one-man show,
and
which we did for the Melbourne Fringe Festival.
Oh my goodness, that's great. That's actually a thing. You can't just walk in there and just do whatever you want. They have to accept you. That's fantastic.
One of the other things I've been doing is just going through all my old writing over the last 10 years, which is so like disorganized and not filed properly. And some of it exists only on a USB and others exist on an old computer. So I've been like going through it all to try to put it all in one place together.
How does it feel to read it again after all this time?
Without trying to toot my own horn, is like interesting going back and like, because after like I would write something, like I'll get really into it and then probably not really want to touch it for a while. And then kind of dismiss it as like a piece I did when I was a lot younger. It is nice to go back now that I can look at it a bit more objectively and be like, oh, there's some problems with execution here, but that idea is kind of cool. And there's some other pieces I want to go through, mainly stuff that I'd written at university and just afterwards. I'd kind of written at the time and not really touched since, and I'd really like to kind of go through and touch some of those up. I'm a fan of some of those ideas, which sounds really
good.
strange.
No, that's absolutely what you should be. I mean, it would be bizarre if you said the opposite. It's like, I can't stand anything I ever did. Although I will write something, I will go to bed going, that is pretty close to Dostoevsky, Sid. You pretty much nailed that. And then I wake up like a few days later and look at it again, excited, and then just go, how did I write this? What was I thinking?
There's definitely a fair bit of that in there as well.
You know, there's a bunch of people in the club who are writers. Have you had a chance to interact with anyone?
I haven't, because of the Australian time difference. It's a
Yeah,
bit easier.
we have a pretty solid Australian posse, bunch of cool people who, and Randy, who's kind of comes back every now and then and gives us a fantastic song. So what I'd like you to do is put together some tiny piece of whatever you think is cool that you enjoyed and send it to us. I'll find time to read it.
Yeah, I can absolutely do that. I was interested to talk to you about, so I studied film, but I ended up doing a lot of theatre, weirdly, because that just seems, no one in the arts ever seems to go exactly on from what they studied. But I was really interested in a lot of conversations that you'd be having with Andy, and I think her name was Emma, the producer in London, and you were talking about, using Zoom and then trying to work out what to do in these kind of spaces now that we're all quarantined.
Yeah.
And it's been fascinating looking at Alone Together and how Matt Campbell, how he's been able to really use the platform in a way that, really works for the medium while still being able to create that suspension of disbelief, which I think is quite difficult.
It's a real challenge. He's incredibly good at it. It was my only admonition to him, is that if we're gonna do this thing, it's got to work on Zoom. I'm really curious about this because Zoom now is going to stick with us for the rest of days. It's become so established and entrenched, and we may have to communicate this way for another year. Who knows? So it's kind of interesting to develop things for this medium. And I'm thinking of other ways of doing it all the time. I think particularly music can work, except unfortunately you're dealing with internet and lag issues. But even so, there's probably a way of getting music going on that. But certainly drama, because it is very theatrical.
Yeah. Have you guys been spitballing other ideas for potential projects, like outside of DS9?
Absolutely. I'm thinking of.
I would love to see you and Andy do some.
Yeah, I'm always trying to think of things to do. So if you've got an idea, let me know. I mean, maybe that's more appropriate. Don't send me something to read. Come up with some idea and we'll try and develop it. That goes for everybody, really. We could be here for quite some time.
Have you ever seen the comedy Friday Night Dinner?
No, I haven't. Friday Night Dinner.
I was going to say it's a very British farce at its best. Well, in my opinion, British farce at its best. It's it's a television show. It's such a simple concept. Every episode is 20 minutes, and it's Friday Night Dinner, and it's just a comedy. I'm
writing it down because I forget everything.
Something like that, I think, would be really interesting translated to Zoom, is kind of doing, kind of a comedy of a family dinner who they usually get together every week or every whatever. Them trying to do that over Zoom, I think could be interesting.
You should look at it. You should give it a go. Give it a whirl. I'd like to do that. All right. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you again, Sid.
No worries.
Next up, we are going to Miriam.
Miriam.
Hi.
Hello. Where are you?
I am in the other Vancouver, Washington.
And who are you with? Introduce us.
This is my son, Owen. He's 21.
Hi, Owen.
Greetings.
Nice to meet you, my friend. 21. My boy's 23. So yeah.
Awesome.
On the same kind of zone.
Both my boys have autism. They're wonderful children. I'm really very fortunate, very lucky to have
absolutely
beautiful, intelligent, sweet, loving.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And what affinity do you feel for Teresa and our conversation?
A lot of affinity. Just got finished battling stage 4B ovarian cancer for the second time. I'm in remission.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. You're brilliant. That's
you.
an incredibly talented thing to do, to be honest.
I'm going to keep on fighting because it's going to keep on coming back. But
absolutely. And you owe it to Owen, and you owe it to your other boy.
Exactly. And I owe it to myself. And being able to see the world every day and look out and see those green leaves you were talking about, which I love too. All of the things that the world has to offer. It changes your perspective when you get cancer and makes you realize.
I'm sure it does.
It really does. It's an easy out, but it's also makes you hold on to the precious that much more.
Did you have an idea before it happened, before you were diagnosed? Did you go, maybe I have ovarian cancer?
No, it is rarely found in the early stages. It's almost always found in stage 4 because by then it's passed on to other parts of the body and you start feeling pain. But ovarian cancer by itself is not painful when it's just in your ovaries. I had what I thought was gallstones. I went into the hospital thinking I was going to get my gallbladder out. And they found on my left ovary, they found a tumor, a little tiny one. So we didn't know really at that point what it was. We assumed it was cancer. But then they do an exploratory surgery, and that's when you really find out. They opened me up and they went, and they closed me right back up again. And it was just too much everywhere. So they had to do chemo to reduce it. Fortunately, I respond really, really well to chemo. So,
that's great, because chemo itself is like, you take poison to cure yourself. I mean,
it is really hard. The cancer after a point, especially when it came back the second time, it hurts. I mean, it really hurts. The pain that you have, it's really hard to describe. It's kind of like your insides are melted. So if you lie down on your right side, they all melt down into your right rib cage, or over, or they melt down. It's a very uncomfortable sensation. So the chemo was a relief because that went away, all that yucky feeling, even with all the side effects and the fatigue and the nausea and all of the stuff that chemo gives you. I'm much happier on chemo, frankly. That painful thing is gone.
So did you go to the hospital by yourself when you found out?
My sweet husband down there, who's been with me the whole time, his name is Bill. And
hello.
Hey, Bill, it's lovely to see you. Friend.
I have a family of boys.
You do, and they seem pretty decent to me.
They are pretty amazing.
I've been in the room with other people being diagnosed, for my mother, for example, but I cannot imagine what it was like to be her, and I never asked her that question.
I'm sorry that she was diagnosed. It's a dreadful feeling.
Thank you.
It's panic and dread.
I hope you don't mind me asking you this. This is really personal.
It really is good for people to know, to hear it from people who are actually going through it, because when people see me, they think, oh, cancer, and they're a little afraid to approach me. And the only ones who aren't are kids. And I love the kids because they always ask me the honest questions and I can give them the honest answers. It's not a big deal. But adults tend to be a little more worried about that they're going to offend. It's fine. These are actually really good questions you're asking.
Panic was the first thing because you didn't have any idea about what that meant, what this cancer means, what it was going to do to your life. But you knew it was going to change your life from that moment on.
Exactly. Well, and I'm fairly young. I was 57 when I was diagnosed. It came as a really big surprise. And once I got a handle on the anxiety, so they give you good drugs to help you deal with that. They really need them, though, at that point, because the anxiety can be really overwhelming and devastating and stops your life in other areas. That was the hard one. The second time I was diagnosed, I was upset because it came back after a year, but I was looking forward to going into chemo. I was going to feel really good after 3 or 4 cycles. So that's where I'm at now. I mean, I've got the fatigue and all of that, but I planted a whole vegetable garden. I've got blueberries, and tomatoes, and carrots, lots of carrots, and
that is great.
Onions and grapes and all kinds of wonderful things growing out there because
that's wonderful.
I want a garden. I haven't got anywhere to go, and especially when you have cancer and you're getting chemo, you're not supposed to go out anyway. And with COVID, you're getting treated while COVID is going on, so you're masked up and you're wearing a face shield.
Yeah.
I'll be damned if I wasn't going to make it a garden, at least.
How did you react to hearing that your mom had stage 4 cancer?
It came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I'm really, really sorry for you. It's a tough thing to deal with. What's been the thing that makes you most happy during the COVID time?
Gosh, I was already fairly careful with going out and doing things because I have other chronic illnesses. So I have masks anyway. So it wasn't really that big a change for me. The hardest thing is not being able to take my kids swimming, take them out. We did homeschooling, so it was up to me to take them all the places. And I really knew that. The year before I was diagnosed, when I started really feeling sick, for the 4 years before that, we had been foster parents for mother cats and kittens. 86 cats and kittens over 4 years. we very much like to be involved in the animal community, in the Star Trek community. But these things, like reaching out, being able to talk to you. You were talking about music, working on Zoom earlier.
Yeah.
An artist who's British, who you should know about, her name is Imogen Heap. She is amazing. And I just spent from noon today to almost 4 o'clock listening to her do requests from people. They would throw her lyrics and she'd create music. And she has these gloves that she's created, that she built, which can bend sound and twist and yaw sound. And so she can capture a sound in her glove and she can send it off, or she can move it to one speaker to the next speaker. She has all these gestural movements that she can do.
Wow. I've heard of her, and I
really should check her out.
I absolutely will.
So I've been watching her a lot, and Star Trek stuff, you guys a lot. I feel really lucky and really blessed to have this. This is wonderful.
I agree. This is a wonderful ongoing community, and it's absolutely essential for me. I mean, I really enjoy it. Has your hair ever grown back since?
Yes.
Is it really frizzy, really curly?
It started out very curly. I've always had really curly hair, so it became even more curly. And I didn't like it when I started the chemo, because then it's like, you do this and hair, you can see hair falling out, because I keep it short.
It looks good. You really don't need the scarf. I mean, it looks really good without the scarf. You look terrific. And so did Teresa too. And it's one of those things, half the men of the world shave their heads bald and we're totally relaxed about it. But women, for some reason, it doesn't happen. It's taboo. They look just as good. I really want to get to the place where you turned the corner and you started to feel the anxiety go away, and that you started to go, right, I'm going to help the people around me with this. And in doing that, I will help myself too.
It didn't really happen the first cycle, the first time I fought it. It happened very early on this time. As soon as I got into chemo, within a day, I felt like I wanted to turn around and reassure people that, I have stage 4B. I have the worst you could possibly have. But I'm here 2 years later. I'm happy up. I'm moving. I planted a garden. With my kids, I'm cooking. I'm doing the things I love. And I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep fighting as much as I need to. Every time that anxiety creeps in, I remember, all I have to do is go back into chemo, because it really does save my life. Going as far as I can go until, somebody drops the 2-ton weight on me, like,
like the animation, the Tom and Jerry, absolutely. I just love your spirit, and I just think just your freedom, your ability to just talk free and help us, and you're just such a joyful, bouncy creature. I'm just going to thank you on behalf of all of us for coming forward, and please come back, give us updates, let us know if you think of anything.
Nourishing. This whole thing has been so nourishing, and seeing all these wonderful fans. I've got you all over the place, so I can see all the other fans, because I love Star Trek fans, and I can't be with you right in person in the room, but having this is so wonderful.
All right, my dear. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you, Owen, for having the courage to hang in there. See you anon. See you around.
On the morrow.
Next up, we're going to Kristen. Hello.
Hello. How's it going where you are?
I'm in a small town north of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Brilliant. How's the vibe? What's going on?
I'm a teacher. We just got our return to school plans for next year, and
they suck.
Oh yeah, they suck. So
are you a public school teacher?
I am.
Oh, brother.
So now I'm like, what do I do with my son? Because he'll be in second grade. We got news that preschool is canceled, so there goes my 4-year-old school. So.
Yeah, it's difficult to say, but I don't know that this is going to turn out the way everybody's saying it's going to turn out. So I'm not sure. People are going back in September, like they say. What age are your kids generally?
12 to 14. I get some high school kids, 10th and 12th graders. Our school, it's a very small public school, so it ranges from 7 through 12.
Okay.
And I teach English.
Oh, brilliant. So this is might be right up your alley. So what's your thoughts on tolerance? And
trying to teach empathy is hard. Being in an inner city school with a lot of minority kids, they have this mindset of, we can't do any better. We're at the bottom already. Tolerance isn't really what's taught, but more of understanding that you are capable of great things. I tell some of my kids, like, you're worth fighting for. You are worth it. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not capable of doing great things. So in March, I was in the middle of teaching Milkweed, which is a Holocaust novel. Their knowledge of World War II, of the Holocaust, of all of those things, just like, this happened. I'm like, yes, it happened. They're like, well, I wouldn't have let this happen. I just would have told them no. I would have told the cops that, and I'm like, not how this works, guys. You can't just to the cops and say, no, you can't take my rights away. And it'll be interesting when we go back after riots and everything else, because we did have rioting and protests here in Cincinnati, so it'll be interesting to hear their take on it.
I'm kind of curious, because when you said you're trying to tackle Holocaust, which is pretty complicated, I'm trying to figure out how tolerant, because I think that racism, sexism, these isms are triggers. They escalate. And I'm trying to find out where you can de-escalate. You can crumple without necessarily being weak. You can get hit by a racist slur, in my case, or a sexist slur in yours, or whatever it might be, and not get triggered, not come back in a way that is anticipated. And that's where the progress, to me, happens, in the interpersonal sense, not in the big political sense. My goodness, we have to be triggered as a society. Just in this relationship, because this is actually malleable. I can make you different by the way I act. And that really interests me. And obviously that's your job on some level.
Something I talk to my kids about code switching, and how the way that they talk with me versus their friends versus their parents versus their grandparents, church, wherever not. And they're like, oh, we don't do that. I'm like, think about how you're talking to me now. You're making small changes depending on your audience. And it's, when I talk about propaganda, media literacy with them, and getting them to understand, like, there's tactics that politicians use, that the media uses, to get you to like them, pay attention to them, get sucked into it.
Yeah.
And they don't believe me for a second, and then they go back like, oh, wow, yeah, you're right. I tell my 4-year-old now, it's okay to have big feelings. It's okay to be feeling this way. Let's find out why. Why are you feeling this way? And sometimes you just gotta let them go.
Yeah.
You're just mad at everybody else. Okay, de-escalate it. Go get a drink. Let's come back. That, and I brew them tea the next day.
Great thing to do. That's a great thing to do. The teachers I most responded to were the ones who shared personal things, like brewing a cup of tea for everybody. That's a very personal gesture to me.
They're like, we've never had this before. I'm like, you know what? We're just going to sit here and have a cup of tea. We'll read our books and we will have some tea. It's the little things.
Perfect. I wish you so much luck and love for all these kids. I hope everything goes well in the next few. I know that you're going to find out actually what's going on, and I'm hoping that common sense will prevail. Thank you for sharing all your stories.
And thank you for sharing yours.
We are next going to Olga.
Oh, fantastic.
Hello.
Oh, it's lovely to meet you. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm in Siberia.
I don't think you're the first person I've met who's in Siberia.
I'm in Russia, but I'm actually closer to Mongolia than to Central Russia.
Are you staying inside, or are you able to go outside?
With this COVID thing, the situation here is generally mild. I mean, it's almost normal. We are able to go out, and we went camping.
Nice.
So it's quite okay here, yeah. We are having probably 60 or 70 new cases every day.
Right. So you went camping with your family?
Yes, I live with my husband and my kid. There were some friends. It was really nice because I always feel so good when I have the opportunity to visit a forest. That's so cool.
Ah, that's beautiful. And so are you working?
I'm a jewelry designer. I'm really into sculpting also. So I was actually able to work through all that COVID thing.
Can you show us any of your jewelry or designs or anything?
Exactly, jewelry.
Oh my goodness.
So I've been having it sitting on my desk for a couple of years. Have no time to finish it yet.
It's
okay.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow.
Yes, and I love sculpting, and I used to spend a lot of time sculpting. But well, right now I'm mostly into jewelry.
Your jewelry is like sculpture, so and it's very difficult to tell the difference.
You see, that's a spider, and I'm really into that, creepy stuff. My best-selling design is a spider too, and I always make those creepy, crawling things.
They're very beautiful. They're kind of they're quite disturbing, but it is very beautiful. So what inspired you to do spiders?
I don't know, they're just fascinating.
They scare the hell out of everybody, It's funny, everybody jumps from a spider. I mean, I quite like them, but only because they eat flies, and I don't like flies. But I've seen several black widow spiders in Los Angeles. I mean, really dangerous ones. But we don't have any up here in Massachusetts. Do you have dangerous spiders in?
No, we do not have any, dangerous spiders here. I only see dangerous stuff when I visit Thailand, because it's really cold here in winter. So I usually try to move away.
Yeah. Tell me something, because this is quite interesting. Yeah. When I grew up, our governments weren't best friends in the UK and in the USSR back then. Siberia had a really terrible reputation because it was where all the gulags were. I mean, that cannot be what you think of Siberia. Tell us about Siberia. I've got a friend who went there and said it was really great, actually. He said it's actually really very beautiful. It's quite extreme weather. It's a lot of big open spaces. He said it was a bit like Canada. Does that
it's a lot like Canada. Yes, it's a lot like Canada. We have, the nature is really we have great nature here. We have lots of forests. We have lots of mountains. We go for vacation. There's mountain territory that is called Altai Mountains, and it is beautiful. That is breathtaking.
Yeah.
They have those, cold, swift rivers, beautiful, beautiful rocks and mountains. That is Siberia.
Sounds like a place I'd love to visit.
Oh, please do, anytime.
Yeah. What do you like to cook?
I guess my favorite thing is raw salmon. The bad thing is that we usually don't have it here. All salmon that they serve here is either lightly salted or smoked. It seems a little bit dangerous to, eat raw fish in here because it's all brought from far away.
Yeah. Norway. Most of your salmon probably comes from
Norway. Well, we eat it a lot when we visit Thailand in winter. Yeah, I eat a lot of raw salmon.
I went to I was told was Stalin's favorite restaurant, which is on a little lake. But I had some really good food. It was Georgian restaurant. Really good.
Georgian restaurants are the best. Yep.
Really, and I had a really good time there. I met some really interesting people from the ballet, the Moscow Ballet. I thought it was really nice to see because I really expected Moscow because I've been given years of propaganda about Russia.
There is so much stuff which is so great about Russia. That would be really nice if they had finally left it behind.
Absolutely. Well, 3 of my favorite artists are Russian, so massive fan of Pushkin, huge fan of Chekhov. He wrote War and Peace. Tolstoy.
You mean Tolstoy? Leo Tolstoy, yeah.
Just read The Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky. Big fan of Chekhov, especially growing up as an actor because he wrote just some of the best plays ever written. Pushkin just wrote some of the best poetry. The Golden Cockerel. Oh, Salieri, the story, fantastic. Yes. Which was written by the guys in the West.
Any favorite Russian painters? Because I'm really into painting.
Tell me what your favorite painting is. Painter.
My favorite painter is Vruble. Mikhail Vruble. You can check it because he's amazing. All those paintings, they are really, They have very peculiar style. He's, connected, that Russian poet Lermontov.
Yes, I've heard of him.
There are a lot of connections between their, art, that poetry and those paintings. They have those giant paintings in the Tretyakov Gallery in Moscow. And every time I visit Moscow, I go to the Tretyakov Gallery, sit in front of the Demon, the most popular painting by Rubel. It's called The Demon. I can spend an hour just staring at it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure talking to you.
Okay, we have time for one more person tonight. We're going to go to Emily.
Oh, fabulous.
She is.
Emily!
Oh.
Oh. Whereabouts in the world are you? You look like you might be in the kitchen.
I live in a very small apartment. So this is it.
Oh, wow. Are you like in
my apartment is in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Oh, fantastic! That's really cozy. It's like a little caravan. You could be in a kind of. It could be a wagon. It could have wagon wheels, and you could just go somewhere. That's
it
really
feels
cool.
hot enough to wagon sometimes.
It's very cool. Is it boiling hot?
DC summers are tricky, and this apartment just kind of holds all the heat in. So earlier tonight, I was running around, opening windows, trying to create like cross currents and all sorts of things.
That's tough. I found that my mother-in-law actually taught me, and I'm sure everybody knows this, but if you put one fan backwards in a window and another fan forwards in a window, you do get quite a nice cross current. Is that something that works for you?
This is something that I've heard. I had 2 fans and then one of them died. That's right.
You're going to go to Ocean State or whatever your hardware store is, or whatever. One of those. So you're the second person from Maryland tonight.
I know. I've noticed there seems to be some sort of very strong Maryland contingent.
It's a conspiracy because there'd been no Marylanders for ages, and then suddenly you all come along at the same time, like the buses.
We had a meeting about it, and lots of memos were passed around, and then we all decided to defend together.
Let's convene at the social club, and you're going to get up to something really wicked afterwards because this is all code, isn't it? You just communicate.
But we can't tell you.
What do you do to make yourself happy?
It was one of those things that was very frustrating as soon as things went into lockdown, because everything that I do, both for work and pleasure, depends on people congregating, because I'm a theater person. I work in the theater, and I also work in an educational theater that goes into schools. Yeah, and the main thing that I do for fun is I sing. So I'm just a little cocktail of all the things you're not supposed to do.
You are. What do you like to sing? What's your favorite kind of stuff to sing?
Well, I've got
I'm not asking you to do it, by the way, right away. Yeah, you can come back and do it. It's not fair to make someone sing without any preparation at all.
My housemates might not appreciate it at 11 p.m. No, I sing in a big symphonic choir in town. Oh. So we sing in the Kennedy Center generally. We do all the big orchestral stuff.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic. What's your range?
In a choir, I sing alto, because that's kind of where anyone who can basically read music gets kind of stuck. And then it turns out that that's a good fit. And it's been fascinating as I've grown older, now that I'm in my late 30s, to kind of watch as my voice has thoroughly shifted into that register, which it wasn't always.
Yeah.
So
the coloratura days are gone, honey.
It's very frustrating because I do have a soprano sister, so she's got the high range, but luckily every now and then we get to do duets.
That's very nice. Yeah. What's your favorite thing to sing? I mean, everybody has a fave, you know. Is it like one of the Messiah type deals, or one of those sort of what kind of thing?
The thing that's so wonderful about music is I think it can be very tied to experience. For me, one of the most incredible singing experiences of my life, we did Mahler's 8th Symphony, which is the one that they call the Symphony of 1,000. Because you need a massive choir as well as a massive orchestra. You need multiple vocalists, boys choir. And we did it in St. Paul's Cathedral in London on a tour.
Wow.
And just, Mahler is one of my favorite composers because he just goes so hard. And he leaves no feeling unturned. And so the end of that, when everything is just going full out in that space.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, if you like Mahler, you're gonna love Wagner. I mean, these are kind of late romantic super gods.
Yeah,
that's huge. That's huge. What an experience, though. St. Paul's Cathedral.
Incredible. Yeah.
Oh my, because that with Christopher Wren's dome hanging over you, whispering gallery. I mean, the sound must have been.
It goes forever. Wow. It's remarkable. And I've sung at, there's a big national cathedral in DC that I've sung at many times as well.
Yeah.
And that's a big, beautiful space, but sound is a lot more muddy in that space.
Yeah.
Whereas I've got like the recording of the London concert, and it's
I love I love those big, punchy choral works. I love the Berlioz Requiem, if you ever heard that.
It's ever so slightly frustrating as an alto because he only wrote it for soprano, tenor, bass, but it's fine. I don't begrudge Berlioz.
Yes,
I have done that one a couple times, though.
I've kind of geekishly followed along with a score because my stepfather bought scores to all his favorite music. We had Berlioz. We had scores this big. I mean, the books are huge.
Oh, you got like the full score. Nice.
Oh, full score. Yeah, absolutely. He had a collection of scores across 7 or 8, 12 of. It must have been a dozen or more composers. He had the entire works of Wagner, he had entire works of Beethoven, Bach, he had Berlioz, he had, you name it. He actually had way more than 12 composers. He was a massive fan of classical music, and he played piano and he loved to do it. And he ran the Greater London Council, a big political body in London before it was disbanded, but he ran all the arts and recreation. So he was like the guy from opera and all that stuff. My goodness! So you sang. You see, I did that as a kid. I loved. I used to go out singing. We'd sing Handel usually because that was what it lends itself nicely to little boys' voices because we're all up there somewhere. Right, and then my
very
voice.
pure tones, very straight, very crisp.
Yes, they are beautiful, little boys' voices. But it turns out little girls' voices are pretty nice too.
I will say, when we did that Mahler, one of my favorite things is that the conductor, because it was the LSO, so it was at the time Valery Gergiev, and he instructed the children's choir to sing like this the entire time because he knew that they'd be mostly hidden by the orchestra, and he was very concerned their voices wouldn't carry. So we saw like these 20 little kids just singing like this the whole time.
Do you have any idea how cool it is to have been conducted by Valery Gergiev at some point? I
mean, there's a reason I dropped the name, I'm not going to lie.
That's a really very cool name. I think he's in St. Petersburg now, isn't he? I think he runs the Kaminsky or whatever it's called, the new Kaminsky Theatre there. Someone will know. Yeah, wow. Well, that's awesome. So what obviously you can't do that. I mean, because everyone's living this new life, aren't they? We're all living this kind of, I might see you, but I probably won't, but I can zoom it.
I'm lucky in that a lot of things that I connect with people on, we've been able to do a lot of virtual things.
Great.
Like I've actually had a book club for 2 years now. That was always an online book club.
Fantastic. Come into its own.
Going.
Absolutely. Do you like ceviche? Do you like raw fish?
Because I do, and I haven't tried that.
If you go down to the local supermarket, and you buy, they'll be really annoyed with you, but you buy a single scallop, whatever they're called, and you buy a single fillet of tilapia and a single little chunk of haddock. It'll cost like $3.50, and they'll be like, wasting my time. You get that, put it in a little bag, run home, but no, buy 3 limes, a little bunch of cilantro, and a shallot. And if you've got any tomatoes, which are coming into season now, buy a few of those too. Chop up the fish, put it in a bag with the shallot, and put it in a little Ziploc, the little teeny ones. Pour in the lime, 3 lime juices, and rub it against the kitchen counter to create a vacuum. And then seal the Ziploc bag, and then smoosh around all the fish and the shallots, and stick them in the fridge for an hour. And then bring them out, chop up an avocado, stick it in there, a bunch of cilantro, stick it in there, tomatoes, whatever you want at this point. You have fun with it.
Just an hour? I always assumed it had to go so much longer.
You can do it in half an hour. If you want, you can even just soak in half an hour. And you've got your really healthy, quick meal. Because the only sort of thing, I made myself some because I'm alone, and I make ceviche sometimes because it's the only thing I can be bothered to do. It's really good for you and quick and easy and fresh.
I'll add it to my cooking list.
You're very welcome. So that's it, guys. It's lovely meeting you. I can't wait for you to get back to singing and also getting back to the kids and showing them some fun theatre. And other than that, great. Have a good night.
Good night, you guys.